Hello, thank you so much for joining us. My name is Kaylin Mercury, and I am with the Louisville Historical Museum. And welcome to our three-part series on how to do a family history.
This is Unit 1, Where to Start. Jumping right in, we're going to talk about the process of this series. This series of 3 units is intended to help you step-by-step create a family history. We're going to break it down for you, show you all of the resources that are available to you, talk to you about tips and tricks and where to start and what questions to ask, and also how to modify it to reflect who you are and who your family is. We don't want this to be cut and dry. We want it to be good research and also a lot of fun with a lot of interactive and creative portions. So today in Unit 1, we are going to talk about scope and the investigation process. Scope is what kind of family history you are looking to create. How wide is your horizon? How far back would you like to go? And the investigation process is going to talk about what questions to ask and who to ask, and where to go to find answers when you cannot ask anyone. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. In Unit 2, we're going to talk about perspective, and this has everything to do with the creative modifications that I was just talking about. That is going to be so much fun. We're going to talk about how to breathe life into your family history and make it more than a family tree. And we're going to talk about everything from food culture to doodling, and it is going to be a blast. So I hope you'll join us for that as well. In Unit 3, we're going to talk about recording and preserving your family histories. It's so important to record it and share it in a way that it will withstand the test of time. Technology is always changing, and family items are always changing hands. And it's really important that we go through those steps so that all of your hard work and your family history survives. So follow along with us in those 3 units, and we cannot wait to hear about your finished products. Before we get started, I want to go through some reminders with you. First of all, don't get overwhelmed. Family histories can often be a little daunting to people, and I think it has a lot to do with the amount of research and writing that is typically thought to be involved. And while the research is really important, because it's important that you know who you're talking about and that it is done correctly, it doesn't have to all be about dates and writing. And we are going to make sure that it's manageable steps that you can follow and worksheets that you can easily access, fill out, and have. And so hopefully it won't be an overwhelming process. I also want to piggyback off of that and mention if research isn't your thing, don't worry. We are going to go through creative and interactive modifications and make this family history about you and reflect your flair. I also want to mention that it's okay for this history to be personal. It's okay if you've never studied your grandmother, for instance, and you get caught up researching about her life experiences and what it would have been like to live when she lived if she's not still around. I think it's important to let yourself go down those rabbit holes and know your boundaries, but also don't keep yourself too strict to the regimen, because it's important that you enjoy this process and you learn more about your family in the process. It's all about your memories, your history, and your personhood. And so we hope that you will make it personal. Lastly, I just want to say again, this is going to be so much more than a family tree. And if you're in it to make a family tree, we're going to help you do that. We have great resources for that. But we also hope that you would like to share that bigger story. Moving right along, our first issue that we need to talk about is your scope. What kind of family history do you want to do? Do you see yourself only studying your immediate family, or do you want to go back generations and study your extended family? Perhaps you want to do a bit of a more alternative history. These are what we call heritage or neighborhood histories. These track where your family came from and how you ended up being in the community that you are today. What kinds of cultural traditions and styles were picked up along the way and still survive in your household today. This tracks experiences, traditions, and cultures across your family history to where you are today. So it's less about dates and more about lifestyle. And it can be a little more interactive, or it can be also just as research focused if you want to get to the root of where some of your family traditions came from. So these are some of the options that are available to you, and you should decide as you're getting started what kind of family history you would like to do. The next step, once you've decided your scope, is the investigation process. There are two types of investigation or research that we're going to talk about: in person and online. A lot of people immediately want to jump to online resources because they're easy or seemingly easy, but they can be very confusing and sometimes misleading. It's important that you get all of the basics down that you can from in person or over the phone or email or text research that you can do before you jump online. Your immediate family holds the key to further research. So it's important that you have the basics down from the people you can talk to before you explore the people that you cannot talk to. What to ask and who to ask. This bullet point refers to the different kinds of questions that you would ask someone that you can interview in person or over the phone or over email versus what you would ask if you can only research that person online. The questions are a little different, and the information that you need to put in to get the answers out is a little different. And so we're going to talk about those. First, we're going to talk about in-person research. I would recommend that you start with interviews. This can seem a little daunting. What will my family think if I call them and ask them all of these questions? It's for a good purpose, and I think you'll find that many people would be interested and happy to share. Also, if you're not a talking on the phone person, it is okay to conduct family interviews over email, over text, as long as you're recording the information in a systematic way and somewhere that's being saved and protected. We've linked an interview worksheet template in the description of this video. It is a set of questions that are across the board used for family history interviews, and it's a great way to start, and it's a good way to organize your information. And so you can download that. It's a Word document that you can make copies of digitally or physically if you want to print it out and write, if that's the way you prefer to do it. And you can keep track of everyone you've interviewed that way. And I would recommend that if you don't use our worksheet, you use something similar just to keep track of everybody. So this is what our worksheet template looks like. For family history 1, 2, 3, the questions are very basic, but they are important, and it's good to lay the groundwork with this information. So for each person that you interview, starting with your immediate family, you'd put the name of the interviewee, the date that you interviewed them, and their answers to these questions. And I would say that the first page is probably the most important. And if you are looking to expedite the process, I would just start with the first page with each person. But if you are looking to go further in depth and get a little bit more about their experiences and their preferences about how they're remembered, I would scroll down to the next 2 pages. I think it's worth asking all of the questions if the person you have is willing to sit for an interview. So that covers our interviews and our interview worksheet template. We hope that that's a great resource for you and can help you keep organized during this process. So interviews are going to be the main way that you will gather information during the investigation process. We also suggest that you look at other items in your home or in your family members' homes. We say previous records because it's very likely that you are not the first person in your family to do a family history of some sort. Make sure that you are not discrediting things that could be used as a historical source. You can look at family photo albums, journals, yearbooks, scrapbooks, baby books, things that people save as previous records about your family and your family members. Additionally, look at family heirlooms. Photos are definitely seen as a historic source, but artifacts and objects in your home are kind of overlooked sometimes. So make sure you're thinking about things that have been passed down to you or your parents or your siblings. It's important to note that these things do not have to be expensive or rare to be important or to be considered as a historic object, a historic source of information. Because no matter what's been passed down, no matter what the family heirloom is, it is a reflection of what that person who was passing it down thought was important. It's a reflection of their lifestyle. And so it's important to inspect those objects and glean what you can from them about the people who owned them and used them. So conduct family interviews, look at previous records, find family heirlooms and inspect them for clues. Those are our top tips for in-person research. Next, we're going to talk about online research. There are so many great resources out there that are available to you, and we just want to make sure that you're being methodical about the information that you're looking for, because it can get kind of confusing with all of the different websites claiming to have information about your family members. So be methodical, use the information that you know, and verify all of the information that you find online with other sources to make sure that you're actually looking at the right family member. There's a lot of people with the same names, and it's tempting to assume that it's the right person because we really want to locate all of our family members and explore their stories, but we need to make sure that we are studying the right person. So our advice to you is just to verify everything you find online with another source if possible. There are some more accessible online resources than others that can be a great jumping off point for you. Ancestry.com is going to be one of those most popular ones. Ancestry.com can be used through the public library system. Ancestry Library Edition is what it's called, and I have linked it in the description of this video. Now, you can use Ancestry for free by signing up from your home at any time. You can go and sign up for an Ancestry account that is free. So you would just go to ancestry.com, hit sign up, and you'd hit sign up for free right here where my cursor is, and that will prompt you all the way through the process. So when you log in, it's going to give you a screen similar to this. What you're going to want to do is build a family tree. Now, you can do this in Ancestry.com, or you can use a family tree generator similar to Family Echo. Both are great resources and pretty easy to use. Ancestry has a lot of tutorials that you can find. If you need help finding anything or navigating the site, there's a help button at the top that will take you to a lot of tips and tricks. So just to get started, you will want to hit search at the top. Make sure you hit all collections, and it's going to bring up this screen. Now, before we get started, I'm going to want to make sure to hit show more options, which will bring up so many more fields that I can plug in that will help me narrow down the search. Ancestry is an international search. It will find people from all over the world unless you narrow it down. If you have family members that you think came from another country, make sure that you have opened it up to those, but it's possible to narrow it by the United States if you'd like. So I'm going to use Helen Bonfy as an example. I'm just going to enter Denver, Colorado. See how it autofills for me there, which is great. Let's just pretend I don't know her birth year. And for those of you who do not know, Helen Bonfy was the daughter of the owner of the Denver Post in the early 1900s. Let's say that I didn't know when she was married or who she was married to, but I know that she died in 1972 in Denver. I also might not know her father or mother's name, but I know that she had a sister who went by May. So I'm just going to type in May. And Bonfy's might work, but remember her sister may have also married, which she did, but in this example, I'm pretending that I don't know. Then we'll also make sure to select her gender. And we want to make sure for the broad searches when we're just getting started that we've selected all collections. And this will pull from photos, newspapers, military records, census data, and other family trees that other ancestry members have put together. Now, I want to make a note there that other family trees that individuals who are not historians and not trained research professionals have put together may not be correct. So always verify the data you find online with another source. So this has brought up many records, over 1,000 records for Helen Bonfils. So we could narrow it down based on the information I think I need. So I originally didn't know when she was married. So I could click birth, marriage, and death, and that will narrow it down by those kinds of records. Now I could also narrow it down by year or by location. So we have lots of options. And I also want to bring your attention to these filters up top left. When you're first starting out and you don't know a lot of information about your family member, make sure that you have all of these as broad as you can. If you're absolutely certain that that person's last name was Bonfi, or whatever your family member's name was, you can move it up to exact and similar is probably as high as I would go as far as exact, because you never know if your family member had moved from another state or another country and taken on a different version of their name. They could have shortened their name, they could have reported it in the census wrong, they could have spelled it wrong on certain documents. So it's important to make sure that you are open to other versions of their name, of their county or where they lived. You can do it by country, by state and adjacent states, by state, by county, and by exact. As close as I would go is probably by state. It's important to know that family members may have moved around for work, especially if you're looking for someone who was of working age in the 1930s. And when you change the filters, make sure that you hit update and it will change your search for you. It's a great tool and you can use it to keep track of your family through trees by starting a new family tree. And you'll just click and add as much information and build out as you can. You can also just gather information from Ancestry, fill out the worksheet as you can and as you go. Even though you're not interviewing the person, you're still finding the information. So fill out that interview worksheet, and then you can create a family tree using Family Echo.
Or you can also use familysearch.org, which is a very similar service to Ancestry.com. You enter similar criteria as you see with my search in familysearch.org with Helen Bonfils, and it will return results by category. So as you see, as I'm clicking through, it found a marriage record for her, and I'm able to pull it up through that category. And you can also create family trees in familysearch.org, and you can create a free account. It's very similar to Ancestry and sometimes can bring up different information, so I would suggest making sure that you check both websites because they might have different information being pulled. So we've covered Ancestry.com and FamilySearch.org, and now I want to talk a little bit more about some of the records that you might encounter on some of these sites, such as US Census data and military records.
I'd love to talk a little bit more about the US Census. Census data is really precious to historians because it captures how many people lived in a place, their education level, their career, their spouse, their family, and it's a great way to connect people across the decades.
The first US Census was taken in 1790, and since then it has been taken every 10 years. And there is a 72-year delay between when it is taken and when it can be released as public data. So the one we're looking at on my screen is One of the search results that came up on Ancestry.com when I was searching for Helen Bonfils. So I had clicked on the result that was returned from my search, and it brought up this, which is showing us her signature, her age, her address, and a lot of other information. And you can tell it's kind of hard to read, so definitely make sure that you use the zoom when it is available on the screen. This next slide is going to show us a little bit more of an in-depth background about census records, and then also where I'm finding this information and where you can find this information as well.
I want to skip down to military records. Some people overlook military records because they don't think anyone in their family has served. I want to point out that even if your family member did not serve, it's possible that they were registered at one point. And on registration cards, they often included social security numbers and the person who was to be contacted with their belongings if they were to serve and not return. Now, that's a really somber point, but it's an important point because it can often lead to other family members you might not know. So, say you know your great grandfather's name, but you don't know his spouse or his mom. On his military records, his registration card, he could have listed his mother as the person to return his belongings to, or he could have listed his wife. It's important to notice that, and even if he didn't serve, to still go look for that military record because it could help you find other people. Just a little tidbit that I've found across the years. Your library system is going to be very important to you during your family history search. Libraries are such a great resource for many reasons, and we don't have time today to talk about all of the great reasons that libraries are a resource to us. But they can be of use because you can use their computers, and they can also help you find local resources who you can go talk to about your family history.
One of the local resources that your library might help you find is the Colorado Historic Newspaper Collection. This is an online digitized project that allows you to access local newspapers from all around Colorado. And it should be noted that several states have projects like this. So if your family member is not from Colorado, make sure that you are checking in with the state archives or a local library around where they lived to find these local resources. Now, this example of a newspaper search also includes Helen Bonfils, and I have entered her information and I've searched by Denver County, as you can see, and I hit search and it returned several options, which I can then click on the image, a digitized image of the historic newspaper. And this is from all different kinds of newspapers. So you can find different perspectives on events around the time when your family member lived, or potentially also a mention of your family member themselves, especially if they owned a business or won some type of competition. It's possible that they were mentioned in the newspaper, and it's definitely worth a try. Today, we don't really think about newspapers that much because not a lot of people still get the newspaper. But back then, newspapers were a source of information about births, deaths, marriages, big life events. So it's definitely worth checking out, and this is just one example of a local resource that your library could help you find. Other options are libraries definitely are aware of historic organizations that are operating in the area that you are looking, whether it's Louisville or another state. So make sure that you reach out to libraries around the area that you're looking for records on your family member and ask them about historic organizations or long-term clubs and organizations in the area, and they can probably put you in touch with the people you need to talk to. If you were looking for someone in Louisville, the Louisville Public Library might point you to us, the Louisville Historical Museum. And that would be one example of a great connection you could make.
I want to also put in state archives here. State archives can be a little daunting for some people, especially if you don't have a background in research or you've never conducted a research project before. I think that talking to an archivist can be scary for some people. And so I would like to debunk that today. So here I've pulled up the Colorado State Archives website, and this is their search panel. And I want to point out that you search by type here. So make sure that you know what kind of record you're looking for. So if you've filled out the interview worksheet for the family member, even if you can't speak to them, make sure that you know what gaps you have and what kind of information you need. So say you know when they passed away, but you don't know when they were born. We would search by birth record. Hopefully you know their name. And if you don't, try variations of a first or a last name. And then also keep your years wide just to make sure that you are not missing them by default. There's no guarantee that what you're searching for will be digitized, meaning that it will be available online, but an archivist can help you decide whether or not they have things that would be helpful for you. You can submit a request form, which is linked right here where I'm circling with my cursor. An archivist would get back to you quickly, most likely within 7 days, and try and help you with your request, whether you would need to come in or that they could make photocopies for you. You may have to pay for photocopies, so I'm just warning you there, but it's likely that they'll be able to tell you whether or not it's worth your time right up front, which I love. If you're not sure what you're looking for and you're not returning a lot of results, it's likely that it's how their search criteria is set up and not that they don't have any records on that person. Supply them with as much information as you can. If it's not digitized, then you need to submit a request. Or if you're not finding what you thought you would and would like to ask them to look for you, archivists are so helpful, and they just need you to be specific. Include all the names, dates, and associated collection numbers that you can, and that will help your request go faster. Make sure that you know if your family member was a member of clubs, organizations, or any kind of religious affiliation, and they will likely help you if they can and if they're allowed to release personal information. There's never any harm in asking for those records if the church or club or organization has kept records. And it's also possible that your family member was mentioned in some kind of club booklet or church program or end of the year association newsletter. So there's never any harm in asking if they have that in their records. I also want to point out Colorado municipal facts. This is important if your family member owned a business in Colorado. You can access these through the Denver Public Library. This is a great resource that was published for over 100 years in Colorado, detailing businesses and births and deaths, and it's not an obvious source. So I would just recommend that you check that out if you are having trouble finding people. Our last bit on online research is tips and tricks. First, I want to point out something that seems a bit obvious, but that a lot of people get carried away on. Use the information that you know first. Use the names, dates, and places that you know for sure. And if you don't know that information for sure and you're guessing, leave it out. You will be on a better path if you start with simple and then get more specific as you've verified the information. Another tip that I want to give you is to try different variations and spellings of names. For example, it's possible your family member has an Americanized version of their name or last name. For example, a Philippe might be a Philip. And it's possible that especially if you're looking in census data, that their name may be misspelled. So play around with different ways that things can be spelled or sound, and give people a little bit of grace, because census takers, nothing was digital, of course. So census takers in the way back when were sounding things out phonetically, and it's very likely that something got misspelled or crossed in translation. So use your best judgment and play with different variations of spellings. And last thing, I want to drive home Verify your records. Everything online is subject to question, so always verify what you get from an online source. Make sure it matches your family timeline, compare it to family photos, and make sure that the time period matches or their age matches when that photo was supposed to be taken, and make sure that it just checks out. So use your best judgment and verify all of your records. So that's what we have for you today. We hope that you will join us for Unit 2 as we leave all of this investigation behind and we explore the creative possibilities of a family history. So join us for Unit 2, and we cannot wait to continue this journey with you.